Hi, my name's Mark. I'm one of the pastors here at Trillium. This Sunday we talked about the gift of tongues, which isn't a topic you hear a lot about in the United Churches. We're the church of the rational mind, and the tongues are, if anything, rational. Speaking in tongues. Eckhart Tolle, a really powerful spiritual thinker of the 1990s, early 21st century, talks about the fact that we've taken that little sliver of our rational mind and expanded it to our total consciousness. And he laments what we've lost in the process. We've lost connection with the universe. We've lost connection in a deeper way with our neighbors. We've lost connection with God. And part of our restoration as beings is to reclaim the total elements of our consciousness that works within us. And it doesn't have to be esoteric. Gary Chapman wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages, and he lists them as gifts: quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, physical touch. And you'll notice that only one of the expressions of love is verbal. The other 4 aren't. And I notice that sometimes the most powerful forms of communication aren't even spoken at all. I know a guy whose wife would bring him flowers every so often. And he wasn't really into gifts, and he didn't really appreciate the flowers. He appreciated the gesture. What he wanted was her to just give him a hug. That's really what he wanted. He just wanted affection from him, and perhaps words of affirmation, verbal expressions of love, like "I love you" is what he needed. But she, of course, expressed love in terms that she understood. She loved gifts, and she loved getting flowers, and she loved it when he would show her what called acts of devotion, acts of service, joining her with those decorating projects, repainting the house or redecorating a certain room. When he would join in with her, that was how she received love. And so often we're in cross purposes because we want to express love in terms that we understand, and we are encouraged by Chapman to actually figure out how our partners best receive love and then communicate in those terms. And we become blind often to the exchange of love and the ways that it gets communicated. And we've also become blind to the deeper streams of consciousness that lie just under the surface of our lives. When Mozart wakes up in the morning and has a total symphony or a movement of a symphony on his mind, he just writes it down. Like, where does that come from? Even for a genius, how does someone wake up with a movement of a symphony in his mind? Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, and he recounts that at the beginning of the story he had 2 or 3 characters, but with no idea where the story was going to go. And he was more a scribe writing down what was coming to him from the outside. Where does that outside genius and creativity come from? There was a really famous Indian mathematician of the first part of the 20th century who was given these dreams. And in the dreams, a Hindu goddess would come to him and tell him these great mathematical proofs and theories. And he'd write them down when he woke up. Again, where does that creative instinct come from? Where does that genius come from? And according to F.W. Myers, a late 19th, early 20th century psychologist, it's these second streams of consciousness that roll through our minds and our lives just below the surface of our normal consciousness, that thinking mind that dominates all things. Yet underneath the surface of that, there's these rich, deeply rich forms of creativity and imaginative thinking that goes on, and how to get those to the surface of our lives so we can enjoy the true birthright of our genius that God has given us. And that's where speaking in tongues comes back in. Judging from what Paul has to say in 1 Corinthians, tongues are really a means to allow the deeper streams of consciousness to come to the surface, to get us outside of our rational mind. He calls it speaking in the language of angels. I don't know about that, but I definitely know that when I go into a time of speaking in tongues, something wonderful begins to happen in my mind. And my rational mind moves to the back of my normal existence. And space is opened up for visions, dreams, and creative impulses.